Shalom Yeladim. Let's learn about the Parsha. The Parsha of the week is Naso, Naso, Naso. The Parsha of the week is Naso, Naso. The Parsha of the week is Naso, Naso, Naso. The Parsha of the week is Naso, Naso. Well, Yeladim, do you know that sometimes in Hebrew, one word can mean two things? Well, Naso means to count and to carry. What does counting and carrying have to do with our Parsha? Well, let's see. We know that the camping of the Bnei Yisrael were in two squares and a Mishkan in the middle. The outer square was for all the Shvatim except for the Shevet of Levi. The Shevet of Levi was divided into two families, into the families that were of Aaron, which were the Kohanim, and the families of Moshe, who were the Levim. But why were they in the middle? Because they needed to be close to the Mishkan. The Kohanim, they worked every day in the Mishkan. We talked a lot about the Korbanot in Sefer Vayikra. They had lots of jobs to do. But the Levim, we're going to find out what was their job. First, before they could do their job, Moshe Rabbeinu had to count them. He had to know how many were in the family of Kahat, Gershon, and Merari. Those were the three families that were in the Shevet of Levi who came from Moshe. Now, what was their job? The first job that they had was that they would protect everybody from going inside the Mishkan where they did not belong. Who was allowed to be in the Mishkan? Only the Kohanim. But the Bnei Yisrael were allowed to be in the courtyard outside the Mishkan. That's where they brought their korbanot on the big mizbeach that had the big ramp. They brought their animals to the Kohen. That's where they would daven on Yom Tov and on Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah. But were they allowed to go inside the Kodesh? No. So you know what the Levim did? They were very musical. They loved to sing and play instruments. They would stand in front of the entrance of the Mishkan playing their music. They didn't have to say, don't come in, beware. Not at all. When the Bnei Yisrael saw the Levim standing there and playing their instruments and singing, they remembered, ooh, we have to stop right here. We can watch and we can listen, but we cannot go into the Mishkan itself. And that's what the Levim did. And in the time of the Beit HaMikdash, there were 15 steps that went up to the Beit HaMikdash before the entrance to go into the Kodesh. And who stood on those steps and who sang so many songs on those steps? The Levim. That was their first main job. But while the Bnei Yisrael were in the Midbar, there were times when they were camping, and there were times when they were traveling. And the Mishkan was a traveling Beit HaMikdash. It could be taken down, and then afterwards, it could be built up. So that when the Bnei Yisrael were traveling, the Mishkan was put together. And when the Bnei Yisrael were camping, the Mishkan was standing up, ready for Korbanot and ready for Hashem to be there in the house of Hashem. But who was in charge of taking down and carrying the Mishkan when they were traveling. If you guessed the Shevet of Levi, you are right. This is what would happen. When the trumpets would blow and the Kohanim would hear that it's time to travel, they would put the things away inside the Mishkan, and they would cover all the kelim with special coverings. What kelim were in the Mishkan? Do you remember? There was an aron, and a menorah, and a mizbeach, and a shulchan, and a mizbeach outside. All of them were covered with special coverings, and poles were put on the sides through loops so that they could be carried. As soon as all the kelim were covered, then the family of Kahat, who came from the Shevet of Levi, who was one of the families of the Leviim, came in to the Mishkan and was able to take each one of those kelim out. And all those kelim were carried by the family of Kahat on their shoulders. The aron was carried. The mizbeach was carried. The shulchan was carried. The menorah was carried. Very, very carefully and with a lot of pride. Whoa, the family of Kahat was so excited with the job that they had. Then came the coverings. All the coverings that covered the Mishkan, or the curtains that divided the spaces. Well, which family got to carry those? The family of Gershon. That family carried all the coverings, the beautiful tapestry and needle points that were made to make the Mishkan look beautiful. They were taken down, they were folded up. And which family carried them? The family of Gershon. Well, what was left, Yeladim? What was left were the walls and the poles that connected them and the silver sockets that held the walls together. Which family took care of the walls and the sockets and the poles? You're right, the family of Merari. They were so proud. They took down all the walls, they took out the poles, they took out the sockets, and it was their job to carry all of those things. So we see that each family of Levi had a job to do. Kahat carried all the kelim, the aron, the menorah, the two mizbeachs, and the shulchan. The family of Gershon, they carried the coverings and the curtains. And the family of Merari, they carried the walls, the pieces of wood, and the poles, and the sockets that the wood would stand in. Now, how were they able to carry so many things? We're going to learn about that in our next Parsha video.